Congressman Meadows, thank you. Thank you for joining us. It's a busy time for you.
It is.
16 days, the government shutdown is over. Wednesday night, you finally take a vote, and you were one of the ones who voted against it. Why is that?
Well, I looked at two really difficult things for me. One, it was not a long-term solution. We're going to face this same problem again in 90 days. And the other is it didn't address a special subsidy for members of Congress and their staff. You know, right now, in terms of Obamacare, I get a special deal just because I'm a member of Congress, as does my staff. I don't think that's fair to the American people. So those two primary reasons, there were a number of others, but those were the two ones that I focused on.
$24 billion, though. We've been hurt. The economy's been hurt so bad. Was it necessary to even get up to that point?
You know, contrary to what's been reported a lot, really my focus was not to shut down the government. I think none of us wanted that. I know up until the very day that it was shutting down, I was meeting with a congressional liaison with the White House trying to figure out ways that we could negotiate through this. And so obviously the results are not something that any of us want, and truly, as I see it, we just need to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Why is it so partisan, Congressman? We keep hearing about only 20 or 30 people in the House of Representatives that seem to be the ones that hold everything up, and that it's not good to be moderate anymore. Do you think that's right? Is that fair to have such a small group of people having that kind of influence?
Well, if that were accurate, but you know, even with the final vote, there was 144 people that voted against the final deal, and so a lot of saying there's 20 here or 30 there is really not reflective of the American people. And truly, I know for me, I put forth unbelievable effort trying to reach across the aisle. Democrats and Republicans here in this district in Western North Carolina know how to work together. I just wish we knew how to do it up in Washington, D.C.
Right. We've got a few questions from your constituents on our Facebook page. This first one comes from Shannon Ballou. What steps will you take, or will other elected officials commit to take, in order to prepare for a more permanent solution after January? It's coming up. We're going to go through the same
Well,
thing.
you're right, and we need to make sure that we do have a permanent solution. Hopefully that's one that would require us to look at having a long-term plan like moms and dads do now. You know, how do they pay off their house? Well, they do it over a period of time. You know, we've got a tremendous deficit. We've got to do that. But there was also some legislation that I found intriguing. It was one that said that if we can't agree, Democrats and Republicans can't agree, that we'll avoid a shutdown in the future because it'll have a penalty that says, you know, we're going to have across-the-board cuts. If we can't agree, that becomes an incentive. It's something that we're looking at, hopefully signing on to when we get back to Washington, D.C. next week.
Okay, another question here. Caleb Dalton, one of our viewers. How do you plan to help the Western North Carolina economy after the shutdown cost us here in this part of the state millions of dollars due to tourists not being able to go to many of our national parks?
Well, obviously we weren't affected as greatly as some of the other national parks, but it's one of the reasons why I introduced legislation the second day of the shutdown to get our parks back open, because it is critical. Called on the governor and asked him if he could step in and help make sure that we could open those back up, which he did.
Okay.
He did. We actually got the parks open probably 2 days ahead of time because of his willingness to do that. And so, you know, I've been in a business that relies on our tourist activity. I know what it means, and so we've got to make sure that we do all we can to avoid that in the future.
Okay. Last question from one of our viewers, your constituent, Todd Naparick. What types of nonpartisan efforts do you think that members of Congress can do in an effort to redeem themselves in the face of the American public? You've seen the polls. You guys are down to like single digits. As Congress as a whole.
I think the approval rating of Congress across the board, that cockroaches get a higher approval rating, and so it really is about trying to work together. I'm a member of two different groups that are bipartisan in nature, and you would think that you could find some common ground. I'm going to take the president at his word. He said that after this was over, he was willing to negotiate on a number of items. We're going back to highlight those items next week in the hopes that we can find some of that. But again, it's about making sure that you put the people ahead of politics,
Okay.
and that's what it's all about.
I've got to answer this one last question.
Sure.
Social Security and Medicaid. What
Yeah.
do you want to happen there? Because there's a lot of talk that entitlements are going to be on the table to talk about from both sides. Are you wanting cuts there, or what are you wanting to happen with
No,
that?
I think we've got to make really more of a systemic plan going forward. That's why this debate was so critical. Is in order to save Medicare and save Social Security, we've got to get our fiscal house in order, because we know that Social Security disability is about to go bankrupt in 2016, 2.5 years away. And so, at this point, it's all about trying to make sure we have a long-term path and make real reforms. I know I've got some Democrats that are willing to work with me on that.
You wanting cuts?
Not cuts to those. I mean, those are benefits that most people have looked at. I think what we have to do is find those that are much younger in terms of the planning. Poor planning on a government's part shouldn't make for poor planning in terms of those that are expecting those results. I know when I was growing up, it wasn't supposed to be there when I got there, and now the closer I get, the more I want it.
Okay. Congressman, thank you very much for
thank
taking
you.
the time. You're back to Washington
Next
Monday,
Tuesday.
next
Yeah,
Tuesday.
yeah.
All right. Send it back to you.